The cake was the first thing I saw when I walked through the front door. 2 tiers, perfectly frosted, sitting dead center on the dining table like it had been waiting for an audience. I stared at it for a long minute before even setting my keys down. To my love. The gold letters read, piped in delicate cursive across the top. No name, no signature, just those 3 words. I stood there, still holding my laptop bag, thinking through every possible reason it might be there. It wasn't our anniversary, not my birthday, not hers. No inside joke, no recent achievement, nothing. Just a random Wednesday. And yet, here it was. A homemade-looking walnut cake. Her favorite, not mine. Sitting in plain view, like a question waiting for an answer. The house was quiet. No music playing from the kitchen speaker. No candles lit. No note left nearby. Just silence. The kind that felt heavy. The kind that pressed into your chest and whispered that something wasn't right. I don't know how long I stood there, trying to convince myself this was just a sweet gesture. Maybe Lauren had a rough day at work and wanted to surprise me. Maybe she thought we needed something simple to cheer us up. That's the kind of person she used to be. But lately, things had been different. Our conversations had gotten shorter. She smiled less when I made coffee in the morning. We still kissed goodbye, but it felt rehearsed, like a ritual instead of something real. And then today happened. I left the office around 2, craving caffeine and needing a break before the back half of a long day. I drove to a small coffee shop we both used to love, Crane and Ash. Cozy little place tucked between a florist and a used bookstore, with warm lighting and chairs that always tilted just a little to the left. We used to sit by the windows on Sunday mornings, sharing scones and arguing about movie endings. I hadn't been there in months, maybe a year. The line was short, and I was half scrolling through my inbox when I heard a laugh from the back corner. Not just any laugh, hers. That sharp inhale, that half snort she always tried to hide when she found something actually funny. It made my skin tighten. I turned around and saw her, Lauren, sitting at a corner table, mostly hidden by a tall monstera plant. Wearing the beige coat she swore she hated, the one she said made her look like a history teacher. Her hair was down, her back slightly hunched forward in that casual way she did when she was comfortable. Relaxed. And she wasn't alone. A man sat across from her, mid-30s maybe, dark sweater, sneakers. I didn't recognize him. I still don't. His hand was over hers on the table. Not just resting, holding, like it belonged there. And then she kissed him. Right there, in public, with people walking around and the espresso machine hissing behind them. She leaned forward and kissed him. Not quick. Not polite. It was the kind of kiss you give someone when you've kissed them before. When you know exactly how they'll respond. Their fingers stayed interlocked. His thumb moved along hers like it was muscle memory. I stood frozen in the pickup line, unable to move. I'm not even sure I blinked. Everything around me blurred. People ordering, music playing, a barista calling out names, but I couldn't hear it. Couldn't feel anything except the tight pull in my gut. The worst part? She looked happy. I hadn't seen her look like that in months. I left without the coffee. I drove home in a daze, half hoping I'd wake up from some cruel dream. I remember the drive in pieces. The blur of traffic lights, the way my hands gripped the steering wheel too hard, how I kept checking the mirror like I'd see him following me. I got home and saw the cake. It looked even more out of place now. Almost mocking. I didn't touch it, didn't even sit down. I just stood there and stared at it like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. But it didn't. Of course it didn't. At 5:42 p.m. I heard the garage door open. Lauren walked in with her usual 3-step rhythm. Heels clicking on tile, purse hitting the hook, keys dropping in the bowl. She didn't notice me at first. Then she saw the cake. "Oh," she said, like it had slipped her mind. "You're home early." She tossed her coat over the back of a chair and gave me a quick once-over. "Why didn't you answer my texts?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I just looked at her. For a long time, she shifted her weight, already irritated. "What's wrong with you?" "I saw you," I said. She frowned. "What are you talking about?" "At Crane and Ash." My voice came out low, Flat. You were there around too. With someone. Her expression didn't change at first. Then blink. Tilt of the head. Eyebrows up, like she was amused. Oh my God, she said. And then she laughed. Seriously? That was my cousin, Mike. Jesus, are you really going to do this? She crossed her arms, her face now twisted with the exact mix of annoyance and disbelief she always used when she wanted to end an argument before it began. You saw me talking to someone and immediately decided I was cheating? Wow. Way to trust your wife. I saw you kiss him. She rolled her eyes. God, Mike, relax. It was a family thing. He was in town for the day. He's going through a divorce. We were catching up. Maybe be a little less paranoid next time? I didn't move, didn't react. She picked up her phone, glanced at a message, and muttered, "Unbelievable," under her breath. Then she walked into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water, and took a long drink like we were done, like the conversation had never happened. I stood there, watching her move around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. It wasn't just the lie. It was how easy it came to her. No hesitation, no guilt, just instant dismissal and a casual shrug. Like she had practiced it, like she had lied before. I didn't press her. I didn't raise my voice or ask any more questions, because the truth was already there, and nothing she said would make it untrue. I went upstairs that night without eating. She didn't follow me. I lay in bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me, listening to her footsteps below, the occasional clink of dishes, a laugh from a TV show she was half watching. The cake stayed on the table. She never mentioned it again. And in the silence of that night, I realized something had shifted. Not snapped, not broken, shifted. Like the floorboards of our life had tilted just enough that I could feel myself sliding, slowly, toward something I didn't want to see but couldn't unsee anymore. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft whir of the fan overhead and the distant flicker of the television Lauren had left on downstairs. The low hum of sitcom laughter made everything feel more surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart in real time. I closed my eyes, but my brain refused to shut off. I wasn't thinking in full sentences anymore, just flashes, puzzle pieces that used to seem harmless, but now cut sharper than I expected. Like her wedding ring. She hadn't worn it in weeks. I used to notice, then shrug it off. Maybe she forgot, maybe she took it off to wash her hands and never put it back on. But now I could recall specific mornings. Her slipping it into her purse, so it wouldn't get scratched. Her chuckling and saying, "Don't be such a traditionalist," when I pointed it out. I used to think I was overthinking things. Now I wondered how long I'd been underthinking them. And the phone, God, the phone. There was a time when we'd leave our phones face up on the counter or beside each other on the couch. No passwords, no secrets, just casual trust. Now it was always face down, always silenced, always attached to her hand like it was a second limb. I started remembering little things. The way she angled the screen away from me. The time she giggled at something, then immediately closed the app like she'd been caught. Once, I walked in and saw her texting in the garage. She said she was answering a work email. In the garage. On a Sunday. With the door cracked open and her voice low like she didn't want me to hear. And then there was the conference. For weeks ago, she told me her company was sending her out of town. 3 nights, corporate summit mandatory. She seemed annoyed about it. Said the hotel would be bland. And the agenda was packed with boring panels on leadership and alignment. I believed her. Even wished her luck packing. But when she came back, she was different. Colder. Distant. Like someone who had briefly escaped their life and wasn't sure they wanted to return to it. She was quieter at dinner. Didn't ask about my week. Didn't complain about her manager the way she usually did. Instead, she wore this new necklace I hadn't seen before. Silver chain, single green stone in the center. She said it was on sale at the hotel gift shop. I remember smiling and saying it looked good on her. I wish I hadn't. Now, sitting in bed hours after the cafe incident, I kept turning that memory over in my head. Every detail felt sharp. The way she deflected when I asked about the trip. How she got defensive when I joked about her packing 3 dresses just for a conference. How she left her itinerary on the counter and then snatched it away like I wasn't supposed to see it. The lies hadn't started all at once. They bled in slowly, like a leak under the floorboards. I just hadn't looked closely enough until now. Even the fights made more sense. We hadn't fought often. Not loudly, anyway. But the tone had shifted over time, subtle barbs disguised as advice. She started saying things like, "You need to work on yourself," or, "You should really stop controlling everything." At the time, I thought she was just frustrated with work or burnt out. Now I realized she was pushing me away, blaming me preemptively, setting up the narrative where I was the reason she felt distant, where I was the problem, the suffocating husband, the insecure one. I remembered one night in particular. 2 months ago, we were brushing our teeth, standing side by side, and out of nowhere she said, "I don't know if you even see me anymore." I spit out my toothpaste, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, setting her toothbrush down, "I feel like I'm just furniture to you. Like I'm here and you notice me, but you don't really see me." I stood there, mouth dry, unsure of how to respond. I remember trying to hug her, and she pulled away. "You don't fix everything by touching me, Mike." That hurt. I didn't show it then, but it stuck with me, and now I understood what she was doing. She was rewriting our story, making me out to be inattentive so she could justify her own decisions. I wasn't perfect. God knows I've made my share of mistakes. But I never stopped being there. I showed up. I stayed in the hard moments. I tried. Even when the house got quiet. Even when her laughter stopped reaching her eyes. I gave her space when she asked for it. And she used that space to build something with someone else. I sat up in bed, running my hands through my hair. The air felt thick, like the room was shrinking. At some point, I walked into the kitchen. The cake was still sitting on the table. The frosting had gone a little soft around the edges. It looked sad now, like a decoration left behind after a party that never happened. I stared at the words again. "To my love." Whose love? It wasn't for me. I knew that now. It hit me in a sudden wave. I wasn't the audience for this cake. I wasn't the reason it existed. Maybe it was meant for him. Maybe she planned to bring it to him later and forgot. Or maybe she just left it there as a cover. Something sweet to throw me off. Or worse, maybe it was some twisted attempt at balance. A token of guilt. Like she thought giving me something nice would cancel out what she did earlier that day. I couldn't stand the sight of it anymore. I grabbed a dish towel and draped it over the cake. Then I sat at the kitchen table and just breathed. Tried to let the silence tell me what to do next. But it didn't. At around 3 a.m., Lauren came upstairs. I pretended to be asleep. She paused in the doorway, then slipped into bed beside me without saying a word. Her breathing was calm. No guilt. No hesitation. She fell asleep in minutes. And I stayed awake, wide-eyed, listening to her breathe, trying to understand how a person can carry 2 lives so easily, how she could slide between them like flipping a switch. By morning, I still hadn't closed my eyes, and I knew what I needed to do. Not something loud. Not a fight. Not a confrontation that would give her more chances to lie. I needed something quieter. Something deliberate. It started with a napkin. I didn't notice it at first. It had been tucked under the cake box. Barely visible, a little damp at one edge from condensation. Just a hotel napkin. Nothing special. I picked it up out of habit, intending to toss it in the trash. But there was something written on the corner in Lauren's handwriting. 514 Friday. No context. No name. Just a number and a day of the week, scribbled in the same ink she used for grocery lists and sticky notes on the fridge. At first, I stared at it like it was a riddle. Room 514. A meeting room? A table number at a restaurant? It didn't take long before my mind landed on the most obvious answer. A hotel room. And Friday? That was 2 days from now. Lauren had already mentioned she'd be out late that evening. Company meetings, she'd said over breakfast. One of those corporate happy hour things. It was the same excuse she used the night she came home smelling like cologne and claimed she'd been sharing an Uber with coworkers. That Friday, she planned to go straight from work to the event. She told me not to wait up. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I told her to enjoy herself and even offered to order takeout for her when she got home. She smiled and said, "We'll see how late it runs." She didn't know I had already booked a room at the same hotel. It wasn't hard to figure out which one. She had mentioned it a few times in the past, the downtown Marriott with the big conference rooms and rooftop bar. I called and reserved a room on the 5th floor. They gave me $509. Close enough. I arrived Friday afternoon with a small duffel bag, checked in under a different name, and made sure to park far enough away that she wouldn't see my car if she showed up. The hallway was long and quiet, thick carpet muffling every step. Room 509 was on the left. Room 514 was just around the corner, tucked into a little alcove near the ice machine. I left the lights on in my room, sat by the peephole, waited. My phone buzzed a few times, friends, work, unread emails. I ignored them all. Every time I heard the elevator ding, I stood still, holding my breath. At 7:18 p.m. I heard her laugh. That same half-snort, sharp inhale kind of laugh that I used to love. I leaned toward the peephole and looked out just in time to see her walking down the hall with him. The same man from the cafe. He was dressed in a casual button-down and jeans, holding his phone in one hand and a keycard in the other. Lauren was next to him, smiling like nothing in the world could touch her. They weren't talking, just sharing a moment. That easy, comfortable kind of silence that belongs to people who think they're safe. She wasn't even wearing her work lanyard. No briefcase, no laptop, just a small purse slung over her shoulder and that same necklace she claimed she'd found on sale. She didn't knock. She didn't hesitate. She pulled the card from his hand and opened the door to 514 like it belonged to her. Then they disappeared inside. The hallway fell silent again. I stayed by the door for almost an hour. I didn't move, didn't pace. Just stood there with my arms crossed, my chest burning, my mind split between rage and disbelief. Even after everything I'd suspected, even after the cafe and the lies, I still had a part of me that hoped she would surprise me, that this would be something else, some innocent misunderstanding. But there was no innocence in the way she moved, no confusion, no guilt. She wasn't hiding. She just didn't care if I saw her. That was the part that broke something in me. I waited until past midnight. I didn't hear anything through the walls. These rooms were too well insulated for that. But I kept checking the hallway, watching for movement. People came and went. A cleaning cart rolled by. An older man with a Bluetooth headset wandered past, muttering to someone on a call. But not her. It wasn't until 6:23 a.m. that the door to 514 opened again. She stepped out first. Same clothes, same purse. Her hair was tied up now, a little messy, like she hadn't bothered to fix it. She looked calm, bored even. She didn't glance around. She didn't check her phone. She just walked straight ahead, down the hall toward the elevator. He followed about 30 seconds later. Different shirt, same careless expression. Neither of them noticed me standing by the vending machine, pretending to choose a drink. She walked right past me, eyes on the floor. I got a good look at her face in that moment. Nothing. No panic. No regret. Not even surprise. Just routine. She had done this before. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. There wasn't anything left to guess. No more questions to ask. Every answer I'd needed was behind that door, and now it was with me, etched in memory. Permanent. At 9:05 a.m., I checked out. Back home, the house looked exactly the same. The cake was gone. The table was clean. Her shoes were in the hallway. Her jacket hung neatly by the door. You'd never know what she had done if you didn't look close. I spent the afternoon gathering what I needed. Not just for me, but for something more permanent. First, I printed the photo I took of them at the cafe. Their kiss, her hand tangled in his, the tiny smile she gave him after. Then I printed the hotel receipt from my booking, and the confirmation email showing I stayed in room 509, timestamped. Next, I called the front desk. I asked, casually, if I could get a digital receipt for that last-minute reservation on behalf of my wife Lauren. They emailed me everything, including a record of room 514 being booked under her name for that same night. It was all right there. Neat, cold, undeniable. I printed that too. By the time she came home that evening, I was already gone. I didn't take much. Just a few bags, some essentials, my laptop, my dog, and enough clothes to last until I figured out my next step. I left everything else. Her dresses, her shoes, her drawer full of self-care stuff she never wanted me to touch. All of it stayed. In our bedroom, I placed a plain white envelope on her pillow. No name, no message, just the evidence, the photos, the receipts, the room confirmation. No dramatic note, no scathing letter, no emotional confession, just the facts. I turned our wedding photo face down before I left, pulled the Wi-Fi router's power cord and took the dog's leash, boxed up her favorite perfumes and left them on the dresser with a sticky note, yours. And then I walked out the front door and locked it behind me. The house was still. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. Not the cozy home alone kind. This was the kind of quiet that felt like a reset. Like whatever air she breathed into the place had finally evaporated. And in its absence I felt clarity. Not relief. Not yet. But clarity. And that was enough to get me moving. I didn't feel dramatic when I left. There was no surge of adrenaline. No trembling hands. No last look back at the house like it was a crime scene. It felt procedural. Clean. Almost boring in the way serious decisions often are once they've already been made. I checked into a short-term rental on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. One bedroom, neutral walls, thin curtains that let the morning light in too early. I put my bag down, fed the dog, and sat on the edge of the bed, listening to a place that didn't know me yet. That felt important. I didn't want memories clinging to the walls. Lauren didn't call that first night. Not at midnight. Not at 1. Not even at 3, when I imagined her finally opening the envelope on the pillow and realizing what I'd done. I slept better than I had in weeks, not because I felt good, but because there was nothing left to anticipate. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 32 missed calls. Texts stacked on top of each other like panic. Some angry, some confused, some pleading. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. I already knew the progression: denial, outrage, bargaining. It was predictable. I'd lived with her long enough to know the order. Instead, I started making calls. First, a storage unit. Then a moving company, partial service, discreet. I gave them a list of items to collect. Not everything, just what was mine. Clothes, tools, documents. The things she'd never notice missing until she needed them. I told them not to speak to her beyond what was necessary. Then I called a lawyer. I didn't tell him a story. I didn't need to. I just said, my wife had an affair. I have proof. I want to protect myself. He asked if I wanted to reconcile. I said no. That ended the conversation quickly. By the afternoon, Lauren finally texted something different. Where are you? Not I'm sorry. Not can we talk? Just confusion mixed with offense. Like she was annoyed I'd disrupted her schedule. That confirmed something for me. She wasn't shocked by the evidence. She was shocked by the silence. I waited until evening before replying. I know everything. Please don't contact me again unless it's through a lawyer. She didn't respect that boundary. She showed up at the house. The neighbors told me later she stood on the porch for a long time, knocking softly at first, then harder. She cried. Then she got angry. Then she left. I wasn't there to see it. That was intentional. I didn't want her emotions bleeding into my resolve. The movers went the next day. They boxed my life with efficiency. No questions. No commentary. When Lauren came home mid-afternoon and saw strangers carrying things out, she finally understood the scale of what was happening. According to the foreman, she didn't scream. She just went quiet. That silence felt earned. I spent the evening labeling boxes at the storage unit, hands steady, mind focused. This wasn't revenge. It was containment. I was sealing off a chapter before it could contaminate the rest of my life. Later that night, my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. I answered out of habit. "Is this Mike?" a man asked. "Yes. This is Steven. I manage Zach." The name landed heavier than I expected. He didn't waste time. He explained that company expenses were under review, that hotel charges had been flagged, that Lauren had misrepresented herself, both professionally and personally. She told Zach she was divorced, told her company she was traveling alone. Steven wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling to warn me. "There's going to be fallout," he said, "and it's not going to stay private." I thanked him, hung up, sat there for a while, letting the implications settle. Lauren hadn't just lied to me, she'd lied to everyone. And now the structure she built was starting to fold under its own weight. That night, I took the dog for a long walk. The air was cold, clean, the kind of cold that wakes you up instead of numbing you. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires engagement. This was something else. Detachment. She wanted noise, tears, a confrontation she could spin into chaos and emotion. I denied her that. Silence was sharper than anything I could have said. By the end of the week, the house was half empty. My things gone. Her dresses still hanging, untouched, like costumes waiting for a play that would never run again. I didn't slam doors. I didn't block her number out of spite. I simply removed myself with precision, and the absence did the rest. 3 days after I left, everything started unraveling. Except this time, I wasn't the one feeling the ground shift. It started with a voicemail. The voice was shaky, unsure. "Mike, it's Zach. I don't know if this is weird, but I got your number from a mutual contact at Lauren's firm. I think we need to talk." I didn't call him back right away. I listened to the message twice, then again the next morning. The fact that he reached out at all told me enough. He didn't sound like a man defending a relationship. He sounded like someone who just realized he'd been used. When I finally returned the call, he picked up immediately. "Mike," he said, exhaling. "Thanks for calling. I didn't think you would." I stayed quiet. Let him talk. "I didn't know she was married," he started. "Not until 2 days ago when everything blew up at the office." I asked him to slow down, to explain. Zach worked in her company's sales division, one level below her on the org chart. He wasn't her boss, wasn't even her peer. She'd met him at a conference months ago. The same one she said was full of boring alignment panels. That weekend she came back acting distant? That was him. "She told me you were separated," he said, his voice tight. "She said you'd moved out months ago and were just dealing with paperwork." I believed her. I swear. I believed him, mostly because he sounded less like a man in love and more like a man in free fall. "Now the company's reviewing her travel claims," he said. "Her credit card expenses. Her calendar. Someone tipped off HR. It wasn't me. Not yet." Apparently, Lauren had filed multiple expense reports claiming business-related overnight stays. She marked them as client dinners, networking events, strategy meetings, each one perfectly worded, perfectly timed. But now that someone had started looking closer, cracks were showing. "I'm not calling to protect her," Zach added. "I just thought you should know what's coming. She's trying to spin it. She said you were the one stalking her." I couldn't help but laugh. That part didn't surprise me. Lauren always had a way of rewriting the facts when the walls closed in. But Zach wasn't done. "She's spiraling, man. Talking in circles. She came into work yesterday like nothing was wrong, then spent the whole day texting people, trying to get ahead of it, trying to control the narrative." He paused, then asked a question I didn't expect. "Do you think she actually loved either of us?" I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't have one, but because I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. The damage was already done. He was a loose end in her story, just like I had been. A placeholder for whatever she thought she deserved. "I think she loves attention," I said finally, "and she gets bored." That was the truth. And from the sound of Zach's silence on the other end, I think he already knew that too. Before we hung up, he said one more thing. She's going to burn everything down trying to save face. Be careful. By the end of that week, the chain reaction was in full swing. I got an email from a former coworker of hers. Someone I barely knew. The subject line just read, "You probably already know, but..." Inside was a forwarded message. A mass email Lauren had sent to a small group of colleagues explaining that a personal matter had been twisted, and certain parties were exaggerating to hurt her professionally. I was one of the certain parties. It was a smear job. Polished, emotional, manipulative, the kind of thing she was always good at, making herself the victim before anyone else could call her the perpetrator. But it was too late. Stephen, the manager who had called me before, wasn't the only one watching. Apparently, HR had already started investigating long before I left the house. The photos, the receipts, the napkin with 514 Friday on it. It all fit together too well to ignore. Someone in the company anonymously submitted the hotel information I'd gathered. The time-stamped booking, the duplicate expense claim, the same name appearing on 2 room receipts during the same night, hers and Zach's. And then the cherry on top, security footage. Blurry but clear enough to show Lauren entering and exiting a room registered to Zach, multiple times over several weeks. The same floor, the same time window, no laptop bag, no meeting materials, just her and a purse. Zach confirmed everything under pressure. HR cornered him after Lauren tried to pin the entire thing on a misunderstanding. He admitted to the relationship. He didn't try to deny it. Said he'd been manipulated. Said he had the text messages to prove it. He was given a warning and moved to a different division. Lauren was suspended pending review. The same day she was removed from her company's directory, I got a text. No greeting, no apology. Just, "Are you happy now?" I didn't reply. That night, I finally did what I had been holding off on. I sent everything. The photos, the receipts, the texts I'd captured before leaving. Even the digital footprint I'd collected from our shared cloud account. The calendar entries that didn't align with her supposed work trips. The message from her cousin, saved under a different name. I sent it all to her company's ethics department. No commentary, no personal note, just facts. Within 2 days, she was terminated. It was quiet for a while after that. She stopped texting, stopped calling, stopped pretending. I think she knew there was nothing left to spin. No one left to convince. Her web had collapsed in on itself, and there was no one to pull her free. I, on the other hand, was already planning my next move. The house was still legally mine. She'd moved out after her firing. Left quietly, maybe to avoid running into neighbors, maybe just to avoid herself. I gave her 2 weeks. Enough time to take what she needed. I didn't ask for the keys back. I just changed the locks. Then I sold it. Not out of spite. Not as some final twist of the knife. But because I couldn't sleep under that roof anymore. Every room whispered. Every hallway had echoes. Even the silence wasn't clean. I didn't want to live in a place where every creak reminded me of the version of her I thought I knew. The closing happened fast. The market was hot, and the buyers were young and excited. I didn't tell them anything beyond the legal disclosures. They didn't ask questions. They didn't know the house had been a stage. I took the money and bought a cabin by the lake. Secluded, small, real. A place where every board squeaked honestly. A place where nothing hid in the walls. When Lauren texted me again weeks later, I didn't read the message. I just swiped left and hit delete. Then I went back to what I was doing. Feeding the dog, boiling water for tea, watching the sun drop behind the trees like it was starting fresh. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. I didn't feel like I owed anyone a response. Especially not her. Just when I thought it was over, something new arrived. No return address. No handwriting. Just a plain yellow envelope slid into my mailbox like any other piece of junk mail. It wasn't bent, though. Whoever left it made sure it stayed clean. Inside were 6 photos. 3 were old, clearly taken months ago. Lauren and Zach, side by side in different cities. A rooftop bar. A beach. A hotel hallway I didn't recognize. The timestamps were precise. These weren't accidental sightings. Someone had followed them. But the other three hit harder. They were taken inside the house. One was in the bedroom, Lauren sitting on the edge of the mattress, texting. Another in the kitchen, pouring coffee, barefoot in one of my old shirts. And the last, her exiting the shower, a towel around her, blurry but unmistakably real. All from angles that didn't make sense. Hidden, invasive. My stomach dropped. It wasn't me. It wasn't Zach. Someone else had been watching, tracking her, watching us. I packed my things in under 20 minutes. Dog, documents, and hard drives. No goodbyes. I didn't even turn off the lights. I drove to a new rental in a different town and changed all my passwords, my phone number, everything. I wasn't going to play whatever game this was. I'd already been dragged through lies, manipulation, and exposure. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was a warning, and someone knew where I lived. After I left again, I burned the last few bridges that still connected us. I sent a clean, unmarked folder to her company's ethics line, compiled proof of everything. Emails, photos, expense records, meeting logs that didn't match up. I didn't include a note. I didn't need to. 2 days later, she was officially let go. Zach apparently confessed everything to his coworkers. Word spread fast. Her name wasn't just removed from the company directory. It became a cautionary tale. The house sale finalized within the week. She didn't contest it. Legally, it was mine, and by then she had bigger problems. I sold it for less than I could have gotten. Didn't care. I wanted it gone. I bought a cabin by the lake. Small, quiet, real. I wake up early now. Feed the dog. Go for walks. No more checking Lauren's texts. No more wondering. No more searching her eyes for truth. She still tries to reach out sometimes. I delete every message without reading it. She chose secrets. I chose silence. And in that silence, I found peace.